In a year that's filled with massive sequels, established franchises, and big-budget spectacles all fighting for the consumer's attention, Supermassive's upcoming Directive 8020 stands out in more ways than one. It isn't trying to overwhelm players with scale or endless systems, nor is it positioning itself as the next massive open-world obsession. Instead, it leans into something far more focused and something that we know the developer excels at: creating a compelling loop of tension, consequence, and player-driven storytelling. And in a landscape where many games compete on a number of marketing bullet points, that sense of clarity could end up being its biggest strength. Directive 8020 doesn't immediately present itself as the biggest game of 2026, or even a notable release, but the more that you examine what it's trying to achieve, the clearer it becomes that it has potential to dominate conversation in a completely different way. A lot of that potential starts from its narrative foundation, which appears to be built around themes of isolation, uncertainty, and human fragility under pressure. Set in a high-stakes sci-fi scenario, Directive 8020 places players in a situation where survival is never guaranteed, and where the biggest threat isn't always obvious. What makes this setup especially compelling is how much emphasis it places on player choice. It's not surprising for anyone familiar with Supermassive games, but this is a story that adapts and reacts, allowing decisions to shape the trajectory of events in meaningful ways. Characters aren't just part of the narrative, but they are variables within it. Relationships can evolve, fracture, or collapse entirely depending on how situations are handled, and that level of reactivity transforms the story into something deeply personal. That personal nature is what gives Directive 8020 an edge. In many narrative-driven games, the element of choice exists, but it often feels limited to small variations that ultimately lead to the same outcome. But with this game, the scope is much broader, since the decisions carry weight, not just in terms of immediate consequences, but also in how they ripple across the entire experience. A moment of hesitation, a risky call, or even a seemingly minor interaction could have long-term effects that reshape the story in unexpected ways. That unpredictability is crucial, because it ensures that players remain engaged on a deeper level. You're not just progressing through a story, but you're actively responsible for shaping it while playing that game. The game's approach to mechanics reinforces that philosophy, and that's not something that most developers would dare to do in today's day and age. Directive 8020 doesn't appear to rely heavily on traditional combat systems or power fantasies. Instead, it seems to prioritize decision-making under pressure. Moments of danger aren't simply about reacting quickly or executing precise inputs, but those constraints force you to make judgments. What do you do in this crisis? Who do you trust? What risks are worth taking and which ones could cost you everything? Even if there are action-oriented sequences, they seem designed to support the overall tension rather than define it. There's no fail state. One wrong decision and you could have to stay and bear the consequences. And that shift in focus makes a significant difference because it ensures that every moment feels meaningful. The gameplay isn't just something you perform, it's something that you think through, constantly weighing options and consequences. This design philosophy opens the door for a kind of emergent storytelling that few games can fully capitalize on. Rather than relying on scripted sequences to create memorable moments, Directive 8020 appears to generate them organically through its systems. The most powerful experiences in a game like this don't come from pre-written set pieces, but they come from situations where everything could have gone drastically different. A last-second decision that saves one character at the expense of another, a misjudgment that leads to an irreversible outcome, or a risky move that pays off in unexpected ways. These are the moments that players remember and they talk about. They're also the moments that give the game an element of longevity because they encourage replayability and discussion. That element of replayability is most likely going to be one of Directive 8020's biggest strengths. When a game is built around branching outcomes and player-driven narratives, it naturally invites multiple playthroughs. But, more importantly, it creates a shared space for discussion. Players don't just talk about the game, but they talk about their version of the game. They compare choices, debate outcomes, and explore alternative paths. That kind of engagement extends far beyond the initial release window, keeping the game relevant long after the credits roll. In an industry where attention moves quickly, that ability to sustain conversations can help make the game a lot more popular in a really organic fashion. The setting of Directive 8020 is not just cosmetic, but it holds a lot of weight in terms of accentuating the element of tension and unpredictability. A confined, high-stakes sci-fi environment is the perfect backdrop for such high-stakes moments, and Directive 8020 seems to be using that to its advantage. You see, isolation amplifies every decision, making even small actions feel significant. There's a constant sense of vulnerability, a feeling that things could go wrong at any moment. The environment isn't just a backdrop, it's the most crucial character that helps in shaping how players perceive risk and safety. That sense of place is essential for immersion, and it's something the game appears to be prioritizing heavily. Supermassive games have always been known for standout visual quality, and Directive 8020 is no different. The environments appear detailed and carefully constructed, with a focus on lighting, atmosphere, and spatial design to create a sense of realism. Directive 8020 doesn't try to overwhelm the player with visual spectacle, but focuses on crafting spaces that feel believable and immersive. Environmental storytelling plays a big role here, with small details spread throughout levels and well-placed props hinting at larger narratives. This approach aligns well with the game's overall design philosophy, reinforcing the idea that every element should contribute to the experience rather than distract from it. Another factor that could contribute to its success is its pacing. Many modern games struggle with maintaining a consistent rhythm, often leaning too heavily on constant action or, conversely, dragging out those quieter moments. Directive 8020 appears to be aiming for a more balanced approach, allowing tension to build naturally before releasing it carefully in timed bursts. And we know that Supermassive is great at creating that infectious rhythm. Of course, that kind of pacing is essential for horror and suspense-driven experiences because it ensures that moments of intensity feel earned rather than forced. Of course, the success of any game, including this one, ultimately depends on execution. The systems that enable player choice need to feel meaningful and not superficial. The narrative needs to remain coherent, even as it branches in multiple directions. The tension needs to be sustained without becoming repetitive. These are significant challenges even for a veteran developer, but if Directive 8020 manages to overcome them, the payoff could be substantial. What makes Directive 8020 especially exciting is the possibility that it could become an organic hit. As previously mentioned, games that generate strong player-driven stories often spread organically, with players sharing their experiences and encouraging others to try it for themselves. We've seen similar things happen to titles like Breath of the Wild or Valheim, and many more games have found their ways into the very fabric of pop culture. It's not just about initial sales, but about staying relevant and continuing to be part of the conversation weeks and months after launch, which will help Directive 8020 in the long run. So to conclude, the biggest factors that set Directive 8020 apart is its confidence in its own identity. It knows what kind of experience it wants to deliver, and it builds everything around that core idea. In an industry where many games try to do everything at once, that kind of focus is refreshing. It allows the game to refine its strengths, to ensure that every element serves a purpose. This is precisely why Directive 8020 is shaping up to be one of the biggest games of 2026. Not because it's the most expansive or the most technically ambitious, but because it has the potential to leave a lasting impression. If it delivers on its promise, it won't just be another release in a crowded year, but it will be one of the games that define the year.
And that'll be about it for this one. If you guys like what we're doing at GamingBolt, please consider subscribing to our channel, and I'll see you guys on the next video.